What's up, everyone? I'm so glad that you're joining me this week. I'm your host, Ryan McCarty. We talk about everything people, culture, engagement. So this week, I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome to Champion Your Culture.
Yo, what's going on, George? How's it happening, man?
What is going on? How's everything going up in the north?
Oh, geez. Well, we're holding it down, man. We've got the White Walkers coming, winter's coming up north here. We've got the wall secured. Nobody's going to attack us. We got this, man.
That's what I'm talking about, man. That's what I'm talking about. I'm holding tight in the 70, mid 70 degree weather down in the south. It's gorgeous this time of the year. Usually my knees are aching, being up in Indiana with you, but it's going well, man. We want to welcome everybody to Champion Your Culture today. If you're joining us live here, we appreciate you joining us. As always, please like, share the stream, and let's get the ball rolling. We are coming with you with part 2 of this particular podcast where we really dug deep last week, Ryan. And so we want to continue to do that. As always, Champion Your Culture is sponsored by the one and only Culture of Good. And so we appreciate Culture of Good. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. I know we haven't really dove deep into what Culture of Good is, and maybe a little bit later in the podcast, Ryan, before we recap and everything, we can share a little bit more about Culture of Good and what it is and what we provide, especially moving into 2023. I know we got some special announcements we're going to share as well. But what's been on your heart, man? I know we dug into this, and we want to really dig deeper, really into some of the 6 strategies of making sure companies and businesses understand. We have business strategies, we have marketing strategies, we have sales strategies, but it's really come to a point right now, right, where we're talking about how does culture fit in that, and that should be part of the strategy as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ultimately, anything that you prioritize within your business needs to have a plan.
Yeah.
If you don't have a plan, there's no priority there, right? And people see it, they know it. If we just take culture and say, well, culture lives with HR, like that's bullshit. Culture is really the essence of everything that you are as a business. So when you think about culture, it's your soul, it's your heartbeat, it's the feeling that people get, it's the belief that you portray, it's the behaviors that you're creating habit around within the business. It's like anything else, right? If you walk into 2 different gyms to work out, you can sense there's something different about both of those gyms before you talk to anybody, before you meet anyone. It's just the environment. It's it's perception, it's the layout, it's the look, but it's also, we understand that at the very core of who we are as human beings, we feel, right? And those feelings allow us to believe certain things about this world. If I touch a stove and I feel that it's hot, it creates a belief that from that point forward, I have to be careful before I just go touch a stove. So it changes my behavior. And that's really what we're seeing, is that a lot of companies are looking at behavioral culture, but they're not considering that behavior doesn't happen till it's translated by belief from feeling, right? So when we think about culture as a strategy, the first thing we have to start considering is, do people feel connected and engaged with the current culture of our business? Do they understand what the culture is? Do they know how to contribute toward it? Do they feel that it's theirs? Is it happening to them or for them? All of these things that we're asking around culture are really important, but ultimately, what's your plan?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's that whole analogy. I think it's the 5 Ps, right? Proper planning prevents poor performance. You got to have that plan. You got to have that direction, a sense of direction, right? It's not a good idea to drive in the car. Some people, I used to love, and I still do until gas went crazy. But I remember in high school, gas was like 90 cents, right? And back then, it was like we were still cheap. It was like, you get in my car, it weighs it down. There's too much weight. I don't have that much gas. Keep it always underneath the half a tank type deal. We thought it was a struggle when it went up to 110, 115, back in 2000, 2001 or whatnot. But I used to love just getting in the car in Indiana, 465, it just looped around the whole city. And I used to love just to drive, just to get away, no sense of direction, no real purpose, but I was just driving, right? In the business, we want to drive success. We want to drive people to success, company success. But in this sense, we really have to have direction, right? There has to be a purpose of what we're doing and why we're doing that thing. And talk a little bit more, I guess, as we dive into this, a little bit more on the importance of direction and buying.
Yeah. I mean, I heard someone say, and I've been saying it as well for years, is direction, not intention, determines destination. So direction, not intention, determines destination. We can intend on our culture being good. We can intend on it being engaging and fulfilling to people. We could really want that as leaders. We could talk about it all the time. We can talk to our leaders of teams within our organization. We can talk to our teams and say, this is who we want to be. But if we don't understand or have a plan, if we've not created a pathway, not only for, when I say a pathway, what I'm saying is not just for the organization to roll out some culture program, but a pathway with a culture strategy is how do we get everybody within the organization actively involved in contributing their 4 T's, their time, talent, treasure, and testimony. Time, talent, treasure, testimony. A pathway toward a culture strategy requires us to look first at, we talked about this last week, who are our key stakeholder groups, who are our stakeholders within those groups, and do we have a plan to engage them with a pathway for them to contribute in the 4 T's and to feel a sense that what is happening is benefiting them, not just the organization. So a lot of companies are implementing culture programs because it's good for money. It is. There's an ROI behind it. I mean, calculate how many people you lose every year. If you have a goal of reducing that percentage by 2-3% even, engaging with culture of good and what we do and the kind of support that we offer, the ROI is there every moment I talk about it. It just makes sense. But in terms of how we plan for everybody to actively be involved in it as a community, as a whole, culture is not a part of your business, it's the whole of your business. I'm gonna say that again, culture is not a part of your business, it's the whole of your business. So how do you see, George, you're a strategic person into business development. So when we think about developing culture, what comes to mind for you?
I think the foundation of anything that's developed, right, is making sure the soul of it, the heart of what you want to build is in the forefront, right? So whatever that heartbeat is, whatever that blood that's going to flow that you want it to be, right? So when we talk about culture, is what people feel, believe, and behave most of the time. What do I want that to look like? What do I want that to feel like, right? Because really culture is really tied into a sense of belonging. They feel like they are able to be George, Ryan, Lamont, whoever it is, Kimberly. We got some people that are watching us right now in the chat. We appreciate y'all. I want them to be a part of this. And so it's really how do we then take, because we don't want people to fit in, we want people to be all in, and all in means all of them and who they are and where they are in that. And so from a foundational standpoint, as a leader, I'm saying I need to first know who is with me, who's on this journey with me, and how do I get them into that foundation and their heartbeat. And so from a foundation standpoint, I look at the identity of our people and what we are and where we want to be, right? And then connect it to the why of their purpose. It's kind of the fundamental for me. From a business development standpoint, I want to make sure that everybody's all in. And so for me to buy into what I'm saying, I got to make sure that they are part of what we're doing, right? And so I want that to be a part of that. And so that foundation is really us, and it's not me. The vision can come from me, right? The overall vision can be about me. from a foundational standpoint of our culture and creating that buy-in and developing that, I got to have us a part of the
Yes.
conversation, in my opinion.
I love
Right?
that.
I think we have to do this together. It can't be George, and then go do. Right? It's got to be. This is the vision. This is our purpose as a company, is to do blank. Right?
Yeah.
And then from there, how do we do this as a team? Right? And so that becomes us. What does that look like all the time? I can say this. Previously, one of the things that I felt was important in my last, position of doing, some business strategies and business development, is that I didn't have any training, right? I had no SOPs, no systems and processes until I first made hires. Now, a lot of people say that's backwards. You want people to come in and be trained properly, but when you're starting fresh and you're hiring, say, hey, this is a new department, the greatest thing that happened for me is that I hired a kid named Joey, and he was a part of that foundation, right? He was a part of creating that systems and processes, documenting those things. And what happened is that he felt a part of that. Man, he wanted to help, the next step, the next process, the next training, the next hiring. He was a part of those things. And I think that creating that buy-in really is huge. And I will form it in this word. In order to have growth, you got to first have communication.
Yeah.
And that communication and business strategy and business development is huge, from that standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting what you're saying. I love something that you said really popped out to me, and then another thought came, and then I want to get into these strategies. So you said we don't want people to fit in; we want them to be all in.
Yeah.
That you need to write that down and put it on your website and all over your socials. Like, that's what Culture Good is. Like, it's not a culture program. Culture programs will teach and develop and create process for individuals within the organization, teams, and the organization as a whole to kind of fit into the program, right? With Culture of Good, we're enabling and empowering every single person within the organization to actively contribute, to be a part of it. But it answers two questions. What am I in this for? That's what you mentioned, your why, right at the very front, like your North Star. What's our mission, right? I had a mentor. Actually, it's, Edgar, he was Edgar Cabello. He was in our last cohort certification. His brother, Eddie, had me go around all over the city of Indianapolis, even the McDonald's drive-thrus, and I have a whole video. What's your mission? And people are like, my mission? And I'd be like, yeah, what's your mission? We'd meet people on the street. It was really fun. That's the idea, is like, what's your mission? What are we in this for? Second question, what's in it for me? Right? That's something that Shannon always teaches. She's part of our training, leadership development at Culture of Good, and she always talks about we have to figure out pathways for people to feel not just this is where I can contribute, but we build desire, right, into the process of developing culture. So yeah, let's jump into it. All right, You ready for this?
Let's do it. Cool. Let's dig in.
Right.
So we do it.
All right. So last week we talked about, like, there were 6 strategies, and I was going to post that. And so what we decided to do is do this as the second part. And here it is. So when we think about your culture strategy, I want us to think about the culture strategy being made up of 6. Many times within an organization can be very siloed strategies. However, within a culture strategy, we're always looking for alignment, right? We're always looking for where's the connection, where is there support from one strategy to the next. Now, I love this because this allows us to say, okay, there are 6 areas of a business that, and there may be others that you can consider within your organization. I'm not suggesting this is the holy grail, Or like if you get all this right, it's the Da Vinci Code, and then all of a sudden you just crack open, the box, and culture just shines throughout your whole organization. This takes a lot of work, right? But let's get to a very basic, practical way of doing this. Who owns your key stakeholder engagement? So that first box is about engagement. This is what the initial certification, the 3-day certification that we train and develop leaders within any organization, teams, to be certified in leading culture in a culture of good way, right? In a way that's going to engage everyone in the organization. It's going to engage your virtual workers, those that are out, of the office, hybrid type scenarios, all of that. Even if it's decentralized, when we started Culture of Good, it was how do we engage everyone across the entire country? We were in 42 states, right? And my thought was we have to engage that one employee in Berwick, Pennsylvania. And that was like really for me the start of like, if I can touch that employee's heart. And so we're looking at key stakeholder engagement strategy that aligns with marketing strategy. So you have marketing that is going to be strategic within your business, but many times we don't think about how marketing really can support your key stakeholder engagement. And then we have staffing as a strategy in terms of who do we need currently, what's their competency and capacity. There's all kinds of things within the boxes that are great ways of kind of thinking about each of these strategies. Just a few different bullet points. Communication strategy, you talked about that earlier. You can't grow if you don't communicate well. Or you can grow, you just don't want to grow that way, right? There's all kinds of stuff that grows in a garden if you don't take care of it. But if you want to be intentional about it, and that's really this next one is your growth strategy. What's the plan for this coming year in terms of quarter by quarter? And then also your financial strategy. So how is that being supported collectively? So essentially we're looking at who owns each of these strategies, and how are each of those being supported, and where is their alignment, and where is their the unity between all of those strategies. So we're saying alignment and cohesion. So we're saying in the beginning of the year, look at each of these 6 strategies that you have and ask, are they siloed? And how well are they supporting one another? And do they ultimately are they ultimately going to support us living out what you said, the mission, the why, our cause, our force for good, why we're in business in the first place beyond money, right? We know we're in business to make money. Everybody's in business to make money. But if I were to walk up to you and say, okay, what are you in business for? I would hope you'd say more than making money, right? So what is that other thing? And these 6 strategies, when aligned and cohesive, are your culture strategy. That's a culture strategy, because culture strategy cannot be void of a communication strategy or a marketing strategy. It's all in one, right? So all of this together is what we're talking about.
Yeah. So when it comes to those things, and I don't know if you want to get into some of these questions, Ryan, in regards to combining these and making sure they are aligned, right? How to really design this cross strategy alignment, so there's cohesion and really connecting on all phases, because it's great. What I love about these strategies is my favorite one, of course. We all want to grow. We all, the marketing, but the communication is such a key piece to all of this, and the importance of that employee participation and buy-in on these phases is important too. But does everyone have the capacity? One of the questions was, does everyone have the capacity and competency needed to contribute?
There you go.
What does that look like? How do you know? Like, how do you know?
Yeah, well, you don't know if you don't know what they need, where you're headed.
Yeah.
So here we go, right? So I recruit you to be on my baseball team, right? And I'm your coach, and we get to the first meeting. What are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about the culture of the organization. I mean, turn on ESPN and try to listen for any time at all and see how many times they talk about the culture of a certain organization or culture that a coach brings in, right? But then we realize that we have a game coming up in 3 months, right? We have a game coming up in 3 months, and you, as a part of a team, what position do you play, George? Just hypothetically in baseball.
Left field.
Left field. What's your greatest skill in terms of baseball currently right now?
Ooh, it would be, I guess, my speed and arm power.
Your speed. Where do you love to contribute? Like if you're doing something in a baseball game and it happens and you're a part of it and you feel like $1,000,000, what happened?
A spectacular catch that robbed the team of a home run.
Right. So if that's the case, if we know we're going to be um, against an opponent, say in 2 or 3 months, the question I'm going to ask you as a coach is, how can I, as your coach, help to develop what you need to really fulfill those 4 T's where where you're able to actually fulfill your skills and talents in that moment. The question is, do you have the skill set and competencies to be able to actually be all in? Are you able to fully be all in that game? If I know that we have a roadmap, and this is where this gets very tactical, but if you're on with us today or you're listening later on and wherever you hear any podcast, you can always jump on after one of our live shows and listen to us anytime. It's always 30 minutes. We want that to be something that you can drive home with. But when we get tactical with this, the next step in considering these strategies is, are these actually strategies? Right. So in order to be strategic, there's specific things that we're looking for, right? Um, ultimately, we're looking for, does everyone, like you said, have competencies and the capacity? If they don't have the capacity, we have to consider our growth strategy, right?
Right.
We might have a growth strategy that doesn't meet our staffing strategy. We're growing, we're maybe doing some acquisition. And again, if you're in the middle of acquisition or maybe you're considering something of acquisition or mergers, we help leaders to continue to sustain and build and create culture throughout a process like that, so that everyone collectively, not just the current company, but the company being acquired or both companies merging, can have that sense of continued culture. Each one of these needs to be its own strategy. So how do we do that? In a very high level way, what I would encourage or challenge everyone to do that's listening is just take the first, not for, I was going to say take the first 12 months of 2023.
Yeah.
Hopefully the year doesn't feel like 2020. That felt like 3 years. So in 12 months, every quarter, consider each of these areas of the business, your communication strategy, your growth strategy, and think about what needs to happen within that strategy for each quarter. And this, a lot of it's projection, but what we're looking at is, if I know that the company's growing in the next 6 months, but only the executive team and middle management knows that, but no one here knows that, and no one is and the teams don't have the competencies to be able to support whatever growth is going to happen, then we have a failure to communicate. Communication gives a transparency that says, this is where we are to everyone. This is where we are as a company. This is where we hoped we were going to be by this time. This is why we got there, why we exceeded it, why we maybe didn't hit this mark. This is what we're hoping for this coming year. This is a great timing for this conversation because there's a lot of people out there that are working their strategies right now. And ultimately, the way that this works is you take every single quarter and you say, what is the main one or two things that are going to be happening in each of these strategies, and how are they supporting and aligning together ultimately to say what needs to be communicated based on what kind of growth we're going to have, based on what kind of staffing we're going to need, based on what kind of financial strategy. But if all of these are siloed and there's not alignment and there's not cohesion, then what it does is it actually does build your culture. It just builds a culture of distrust because it's ununified and siloed, and it doesn't create that unified force where everyone collectively as a movement can join together and work toward the objectives or the goals of the organization, right? So once we identify where we're headed and the objectives of our culture, like we talked about last week, those objectives need to be supported and furthered by each of these strategies, right?
Yeah.
If the whatever we want to accomplish, if we don't have strategy to get there, then it's like what you said earlier, you're running, right? Or you're driving aimlessly. And when you drive aimlessly, you get to a place where you weren't expecting to get, and therefore you're not ready for it. And no one else is ready for it either. And then everyone's saying, oh my God, what's this change about, right? Well, all the leaders knew the change was happening 3 months ago, but nobody thought about each of these strategies aligned and cohesive, becoming culture strategy. That actually builds culture. This is very tactical, but for those that are listening, you're like, well, I try to talk about culture and, I don't fully understand what it is. And we have definitions for it, but if you go beyond culture to actually talking about how to operationalize it, this is some of the early stages of how to operationalize culture in that way,
Yeah. You said a lot, and some of the things that really stood out to me that you were saying, Ryan, and we discuss these a lot in the 6 strategies, is, key responsibility, who owns what, right? Is a little bit of what you were talking about, and when does that what need to be completed, meet an expectation. And really, a lot of times in these strategies, especially, and I encourage people, usually I take November to plan out what I want my 2023, the next year, to look like, right? So right now, I'm beginning to think about, where does George want to be? Who do I want to be? Where do I want to be? What am I going to do? All that stuff right now really started yesterday for me. And a lot of times, a lot of businesses, a lot of people, leaders, we get into this place where we're like, man, I ran out of time. I don't have enough time. And really, it's not time management, right? I always say time management is obsolete. It doesn't exist. Time is 24 hours. We all get the same amount of time. How does one person get more done than the other person? It's because they don't try to manage their time. They prioritize it. And I think when it comes to those strategies and things of that nature, what is a priority and what can wait, right? What is the most important? I text Ryan daily, weekly, because my relationship with Ryan is a priority, right? Now, people are listening to say, oh, that's why he doesn't text me. I'm not a priority. That's not necessarily what I truly mean, but there's a relationship there. There's, high priority. We communicate with our people at work consistently because there's a priority there. And so understanding what has a low and a high effort impact on those, on these strategies, prioritizing your time and your people is so important in that case, right? I know we're wrapping up here. We got 1 minute left. It seems like time flies by so quickly when we're having fun, and we could talk about these strategies and really we could take 6 weeks and really dive into these individually if we wanted to. But to wrap up, and again, thank you, Culture of Good, for sponsoring Champion Your Culture podcast. Thank you to everybody that's out there listening to the podcast. We appreciate every person that shares, that likes, subscribes. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the notification button. If you're on LinkedIn, make sure you hit the like, share, insightful, whatever you're feeling, curious, just acknowledge that. Post we like to repost things and shout out people. And so starting next week, Ryan, I just want to shout out a few people that shared our post. And I know that we had a couple of people last week do that as well. So we want to appreciate everybody that's doing that for us,
thank you so
with
much.
us as we continue to grow this Champion Your Culture, team.
Yeah, and so you mentioned when we first jumped on that there's some exciting things that are happening. And so for those that are on with us, you held on. You're at the end of the podcast. We're about to jump off. But we are really excited because we're going through the Culture of Good to introduce our Culture of Good certification for those that want to implement Culture of Good in our process within their business. We're going to do that and offer that at the beginning of the year virtually, which is really, really amazing. I have a lot of friends, and you do as well, George, that it's really difficult to travel and be with us, but they can be with us virtually live like this. So if you love the podcast, if you love Culture of Good and what we do in terms of operationalizing culture, but keeping the soul of it so people can really engage with it. Listen, if you connect to people's hearts, what you can accomplish through your business is unlimited, because people really get behind a culture that they believe in. And so if you're interested in knowing more about the virtual certification date that's coming up, reach out to George or I. Get on cultureofgood.com. You can reach out to us through that or through socials, and we'll put you on a list to make sure that you're the first to know that we have the virtual training that's going to be launching and when that date is. So really crazy, exciting news, George. I know this is like a transition for us, but this is going to open up, I believe, a movement across the country and really across the world of leaders that are championing culture and people in ways that are effective and also in ways that are fulfilling. And so we're really excited about that. So,
Yeah. I was going to say it's making it available. We just want to make it available for everybody. And so this allows some flexibility. And we're excited. I know that our team is excited as we release this as well. So anything else, man, to wrap up this podcast?
Man, I love you.
A lot of great things.
I love you, man.
Hey, I love you too. We love everybody out there as well.
Yeah, we love you guys. All right, we'll see you next week on Champion Your Culture.